Ladies, gentlemen, and young ladies, these are the tears, the lamentations of the side of Germany. Germany, which is very, very excited against the Federation of Russia across his brand new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, Germany doesn't understand anything anymore. Germany was surprised to note that Russia had in its possession of most of their data confidential communication because that Russia has a force that protrudes far into space in the satellite communication framework. Ladies, gentlemen, and young ladies, I told you that geopolitics world has taken a hard blow, another twist. Everything is mixed up. Russia is on the offensive on all fronts. All fronts. All fronts. I tell you, the Russia is now attacking NATO everywhere. Russia has entered the real hybrid war with NATO. If it's not America that is attacked over there, it's Poland and so on. This time it's around Germany to note that they are severely spied on. But they can do nothing. They can do nothing. And he is the Minister of Defense German woman who goes out to complain, to whine, facing what his two eyes saw, facing to what he found. Ladies and gentlemen, within the framework of this geopolitical conference covering international news, this is what we are going to talk about. But before we continue, I ask you humbly to share the video conferencing to the max. Share it in all possible groups. Do in order to give more visibility to video conferencing, and it gives me the courage and the motivation to continue giving to you real-time and up-to-date information. Dissect international news 360 deg. Yeah, let's go deep. Yes, this gentleman is called Boris Pistorius. Boris Pistorius is the Minister of German Defense. He himself is dear to us in person, who comes out and who makes the statements shattering, sad, lamentable, an admission of failure, weakness, and of impotence. He is sounding the alarm. According to, he made the statement for activate the alert so that the leaders understand. Unfortunately, what he warns about, Europe has no solution. Even if the United States of America does not have solution. Let's go into the depths, please. Please. He speaks of a direct space threat against Germany and Europe. He says there is an urgency to act because there is a space threat direct against Germany and Europe. When we talk about space threats, we want to talk about a threat in the skies of Europe. Yes, Russia's strength in the heavens. The sky is ruled by the Russia. And how does this materialize? Let's go deep. Boris Pistorius, who is the German defense minister, has put in guards all of Europe, Germany, and all of Europe against a threat, Russia's growing presence in space. For him, Russia is becoming Russia becomes a very growing threat in space because Russia is colonizing space. Not just Russia alone, Russia and China. He touched, and all those who have been following me here since the beginning, I always told you that in the heavens, in space, there is not a single one nation that can compare itself to the Russian Federation. They are strong. Russian Federation and China, even satellites in orbit, satellites Americans. If the Russians and the Chinese want, they can move their satellite from point A to point B. Let's continue. So Pistorius, it calls into question two satellites Russians. Russia has two satellites, Russians have two satellites in orbit, which monitor communications military personnel of NATO member countries. But the country is a member of NATO for which the discovery was made. First of all, it's Germany. Germany by Friedrich Merz. So, the satellites that are involved, these are two Russian satellites of class Olympic K. That's their class, their rank. Olympic Satellite K. These Olympic K satellites have targeted and monitored by satellites communication intersatellite. Intelsat. These are the Intelsat satellites. Satellites used by the forces German armies and its allies NATO for their various communications. So these Intelsat satellites who are now under surveillance total of two Russian satellites. That is Russian satellites in orbit monitor satellites of NATO and Germany. You can't imagine. No, Russia, no, it is something else. Maranatha. In the skies, Russia leads a hybrid war. Russian satellites are superior to the satellites of NATO, United States of America. So they start monitoring all the information received by these NATO satellites, at least Intel SAT. Russia is collecting all this data. Russian satellites recover everything calm, and Putin receives all this in his phone if he wants. So he looks, he has everything in hand. Maranat, you see. And meanwhile, Putin don't talk. These are the satellites. These satellites that do the work, the job in the squid heavens. And the operations managers take these information, treaties, classes to the needs of Russia, presses on the die. You won't believe it. Germany is overwhelmed. Let's go deep. So, what is the immediate scope of this space threat? The German military communications and NATO are spied on and are likely to continue to be spied on. These communications are disrupted or neutralized at any time. They can be neutralized at any time because Russia is in charge indirectly. This is a cyber attack, or we will say then heaven attacks. Who can we give the correct scientific formulation? Let me say sky attack, so that our friends who haven't grown much, the studies include at least something I want to talk. We attack the AN in the skies without them touch. Can you imagine? Russian offensive capabilities and Chinese in space are overflowing. The German Minister of Defense, Boris Pistorius, himself confirms, and he reminds him to it's NATO and Europe. Pistorius recalled that Russia and the China has developed at high speed their space weapons, while the others are asleep. Until then, they don't arrive, not even reaching Russia at the level of his ankle. So he himself gave the examples. They developed these two powers. They developed at high speed their space weapon, whether it is electronic jamming, whether it is laser blindness, whether it is orbital manipulation. That's the very name of what Russia is doing. H-part orbital manipulation. Stay there. Ask Russian satellites to move enemy satellites by one point A to point B. What does that mean in the end? Means that the satellites which are in orbit belong to Russia and the China, even if they are not the ones who have put into orbit. If they have their satellites already have the ability to take the order. Hey, I think I didn't make a mistake. The order, eh? That's how it is. There you go, huh? To order the other satellites, that means that it's at their service there. And here is one evidence that Russia has just materialized, and it's scary. It's to shake Germany. These are weapons also capable of kinetic destruction. So it's not science fiction, according to the gentleman. Pistorius was very clear. He said this is not science fiction. It has recalled that Moscow has already tested anti-satellite weapons in 2021 and Beijing tested in 2007. It must be said that in Beijing, domain exceeds. China far exceeds Russia. China is the leading power in orbit in terms of satellite. After the China comes Russia. So space has become a front of hybrid warfare where satellites can be attacked as targets military. So the consequences are that Pistorius is alerting NATO, and it is an alert that flows through NATO. Yes, it is a real alert, because that if the communication satellites set are compromised, that's all. NATO chain of command, which is weakened at the moment, we are in the process of talk. That means NATO is in difficulties. The statement German pushes for a response collective. Secure network space, reserve satellite, alliance with SpaceX or Starlinks or others private suppliers. Because the other there it is already. So ladies and gentlemen, here is part of this news. Please share it with maximum, and I will come back to you immediately, the hour, by the grace of God the Almighty, with new information. So it was the voice of your humble servant, the Samurai.